Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, orange today. Actually, Revive colours kind of.
Oh yeah,
with the orange,
kind of.
I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's true.
But Pascal's actually repping the Revive Stronger clothing, whereas I'm not.
It's just
I'm
because
repping.
I mean, I like those, and it looks good. It fits well, so we got it. Yeah, and I just thought it's appropriate to wear those.
I'm really bad with clothes. I don't know if you're like this, Pascal, but sometimes I just have like a few pieces in rotation and I just keep washing them every weekend. And so it looks like I'm just wearing the same things like
me too.
every single week. And I'm like, but I have lots of clothes upstairs. I just can't be bothered to get them out and have to wear them.
And I don't know whether this is a common thing, but whenever I'm actually having newly washed clothes, I put them on top of everything else. So the next time that I'm actually picking and choosing something, it's always the top layers of something, you know? And that's why I'm always using the same clothes. So, yeah.
And then you go and you dig something out and you're like, oh, I remember this. I like this.
I liked most of the time. And then at that point, you don't like it anymore. And that's why it left kind of to dust.
Yeah. I am more and more appealed by the essentialism lifestyle of like, what's it called? Like less things, but better things, if that makes sense.
Minimalism, you mean?
Minimalism, that's the one, not essentialism. I guess it's a similar concept or word, but yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How was your Easter weekend?
So, man, how do I say this? No, it was nice. It's these breaks. The reason I'm being like this is because often I think people look at these sort of things as like, oh, that's like a holiday. That's like relaxing and lower stress. But as we kind of actually the greatest indication of this is I was talking about how I thought I might be able to go through another week of hard training. And then I was like, but it's the Easter weekend. And it's always worse than I think it's going to be in terms of the impact that it has just on my recovery. So there's just, I was forced to deload this week because my recovery just takes a knock from that weekend. However much I try and prevent it, sleeping in a different bed, not comfortable, slightly different routine. So anyway, I don't mean to have a downer. Like it's nice to be able to have that opportunity and go down. But if I'm very honest with myself, I love like my kind of routine, and if I could avoid having to travel like 16 hours across the weekend, I would. So if Charlotte's family were closer, that would be like, then it would probably be way more enjoyable.
Is it actually that long of a trip?
So I don't know if this happens. I don't know if because it's a long trip, this sort of thing happens, but like when you put it into Google Maps, it says like 5 hours. But of course you stop for a little bit. Maybe that's like 30 minutes to go and get some food and and then for whatever reason, it always extends and it's always way longer than we expect. But we also did travel on probably the worst days you could possibly travel, as in that Friday and the Monday.
I wasn't aware that Bude is that far away from London. I thought that it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know why I thought it, but that it's more like close to 2 to 3 hours or so. 5 hours is actually a long distance.
Yeah, so it's basically almost as south west as you can possibly get within the UK. Not quite, like there's further places, but it's pretty southwest. So yeah, and like there's worse things, of course, but it's not like it's, I don't know, as enjoyable and relaxing a time as it possibly could be. I hate to sound like I'm like kicking up a fuss about it, but yeah. I know I'm a stubborn little bodybuilder that likes creature of habit and a home body. Yeah,
but I don't even think that it's just specific to bodybuilding.
No.
I think it's absolutely legit to voice your opinion on something like this, that you simply don't like these type of events as much as maybe other people do. In my opinion, there's no shame in saying that.
Yeah, you have some of those like obligations in life, and it's actually really important that we have such things for me and Charlotte, because we so rarely see her parents because they're so far down south, and they don't leave, although they should be visiting us in London, which would be really nice actually, because they haven't been to London in, I don't know when the last time, like 30 years or something. I don't know.
For real?
Like they haven't visited Charlotte in London before, so it's going to be nice for them to come in and actually like experience London a little bit, but probably also a bit scary for them as well, since they're used to like just Little old beaut.
Yeah, especially when they haven't been into a big city like this in like 30 years. It's kind of a cultural shock also. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it was good. I still managed to get training in down there because there is a little facility down there that I can train in. And I was just like, right, I'm just going to, like, it was a good opportunity just to take everything to the house, basically, because I was like, I know I'm going to be too fatigued to have good quality training coming out of this. Let's just treat next week as my deload anyway. So I just like went and took it to the house. And yeah, I had good sessions down there, which was nice.
What did you do? Did you need to modify something?
Not particularly. It's just like their cable row was a bit different to my cable row. Their leg press is a little bit different to my leg press. So they have like many of the same machines and things, but I just had to modify them ever so slightly. So I can't look at the load and be like, oh yeah, this is comparable to at home because it's just completely different. So
that's why I think
the kit was similar.
Oh, sorry. That's why I think that the RER concept and understanding it and getting a good understanding of kind of what 1, 3, 4, 2 RER feels like comes in very handy, because then the load on a barbell or so or on a machine doesn't really matter to you that much anymore. You just go into a gym and then you take it by feel in a certain repetition range.
Yeah, I guess it's actually similar to a podcast that's going to come out with Brian Miner, where we talked about like not needing to logbook. Like if you know pretty well your RARs and you can train in a proximity to failure, which, well, I mean, I can guarantee I can. Like I know if I'm at like 1, 2, or like I might hit 0 by accident on something maybe, and then you train with enough like volume. The hardest thing is it's similar to training in a different gym in that you don't have any objective numbers to know if you've regressed or progressed, which can make it a bit more tricky. So yeah, that's the only downside when you are training in different gyms. If you're doing it regularly.
I wouldn't recommend to do this style or approach on a daily and frequent basis. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, for a trip like this, if you're then having access to different machines or so, just go in there and then push it in a specific repetition range to a specific area. And then you should have probably induced the same, or at least roughly the same hypertrophic stimulus.
Yeah. And especially if you have a good gauge of that kind of the biofeedback markers we like with stimulus. It's like, I don't know, the machine might be a bit rubbish, or it might even be a bit better or a bit novel, and so you're like, oh, actually I don't need to do that extra set that I had programmed, or I need to just do one more because I'm just not getting what I normally get from home, or I had to learn that piece of kit a little bit, so I'll just add in this third set because I went a bit too easy on the first one or something. And it just helps you auto-regulate those sort of instances, I think. Yeah, no, absolutely.
How was yours? Unspectacular.
Probably how I wanted it to be.
Yeah. So on Saturday, luckily enough, Katie and I, we had a D-Day. As you may remember what it is about. It's not about going to war or anything alike. We don't have them that often, unfortunately, anymore, due to, of course, the kids, and now also having a dog at home. But we've arranged it this time. So my mom-in-law, she took Tony. Hugo was at his father's place. And then the dog, we found a hotel, like a dog hotel for the night. It was the first time that we actually gave this a try, just to give it a try for ourselves to see whether this is something feasible or not. And then we went out on Saturday and had a fantastic day. And we were quite lucky this time in terms of weather, in terms of also the hotel, because I booked a hotel room in the center of Berlin, which was, there aren't really many tall buildings in Berlin, right? It's not like New York City, for example. And there was this one hotel, though, which is one of the bigger buildings in entire Berlin. And luckily for us, we had someone at the reception who was very kind, and she was just giving us, or has given us the apartment on the upper floor. So we actually had an amazing view over entire Berlin. So yeah, we've been quite lucky. And then on Sunday morning, we went back home again, had breakfast at my parents-in-law's place. And this was already Easter Sunday. And on Easter Monday, they all got together in the garden, had a little bit of course, lunch together, Easter egg search and all that kind of stuff. And this is where I was staying at home, already kind of doing a little bit of work. So it was kind of unspectacular and kind of spectacular at the same time, if that makes sense.
I think I saw it was just because it came up randomly. It felt like sometimes Pascal does these random stories on his Instagram. This is the way I tell it. I'm like, Pascal's being random again, where you just posted it up like you sat in a chair and was like something about an influencer. I managed to just about read the text. I was here's
going
I need to ask Pascal about this.
I think I said something like going influencer mode or something like this.
Yeah.
Like fancy hotel with a proper view and I don't know. Yeah. So it was good.
Sounds lovely.
Good. Yeah, it was actually very, very good. And sometimes it's very much what you need. It's like you said, Steve, that if you don't really have the ability or the opportunity to spend that much quality time together, you can easily get lost as a couple, and the relationship can slowly kind of crumble without you noticing it. Right? And that's why I think it's super important to sometimes have times for you as a couple and not just like you as people living together, you as, parents and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point, because that's one thing that weekend always forces is me and Charlotte to spend much more time together than we normally would, and like sat in a car together. So that was a good aspect of it, actually, when I do reflect upon it, although not ideal conditions in a sense. Like I'd prefer to be in a hotel.
What did you do then in terms of eating? How was it? I mean, it wasn't the first rodeo for you that you actually went to Bude for Easter. So it's probably quite similar to how it was in the past already. But in terms of then being stuck in traffic, were you prepared for that?
Yeah, so it was actually, I did myself a favor, because sometimes I take like a Tupperware box and I put a bunch of protein scoops in there. And I kind of like, because I'm trying to save space or whatever, which isn't necessary because we have a car. And so I just took a whole tub of protein powder with me. And that was a lifesaver, because I was like, often my fats end up going a bit higher, because whether or not it's other people preparing meals, or we're going for a meal out or something, or I want to eat a Cornish pasty or something, which is inherently higher in fat. So having that protein powder, just the tub with me, was great, because I could just like sneak in a shake here, sneak in a shake there. And as I'm massing, like hunger's not an issue, so I don't have to worry about like needing to try and abate that or anything. So that was useful. And then also, so it was really late planned on behalf of Charlotte. Communicates with her mum on like a delayed basis, in that they didn't know we were coming to visit them until maybe like Thursday or whatever.
All right.
So Charlotte's mum had sent us like a nice box of just like fresh fruit, and there was loads. And so we took that with us. So having that available as well, where I could just like eat, like I could have 4 apples a day if I wanted to, like bananas, grapes, like kiwis. So I was just eating loads of that fruit, loads, like having this protein powder. So hit my baseline of like what my base diet is, like a bit carbohydrate rich and protein rich. And then I could just like top on top of that other thing. So yeah, it was relatively simple from that regard. And I'm going to remember that for future to like, I don't know, especially the protein powder, like bring just the whole thing so that I don't have to worry about buying any at the supermarket or anything like that. And then, yeah, we had one meal out, which, I mean, we typically have a meal out on the weekend anyway. And then Charlotte's parents cooked roast for us twice. So roast's super easy to fit in, because it's just like lots of veg, lots of meat, and then like as much as you want in terms of like what they called roast potatoes and things like this. So yeah, it's just then having that, and then maybe like I have to oblige and have a slice of chocolate cake. I don't have to, of course. If I was dieting, I wouldn't, but in my scenario, it's like I should have. It'll make Charlotte's mum feel a bit better if I have this, and I can do that in that situation. So I have a slice of chocolate cake or whatever, make that work. So yeah, it wasn't too bad.
No, it sounds great. And I can touch on this one as well, because you've been talking about how you've handled the weekend. And for me personally, I've already told you guys that on Saturday, I went out with Katie, and the entire day we were out. So we had basically 2 meals out. It was for lunch and also then for dinner. And during those times, so for lunch, we had ramen, which is a little bit harder to estimate in itself, because ramen is always a little bit different. And I was just like considering it to be somewhere around 600 to 700 kcals. And then the second one, we were at a burger place. And I'm not the biggest fan of burgers, but it was pretty straightforward actually, because I took the classic burger with an additional patty on it, and they weighed things out. So I knew that I had like 300 grams of pure meat alongside them with a bun and all that kind of stuff. So pretty easy to then be relatively on point and not stress out about anything. And then Katie was always ordering something as a dessert. That was also kind of like a chocolatey cake. And I was having most of it there as well, which I wouldn't have done like years ago. And it just speaks for itself, Steve, also listening to what it is that you went through, how much we've developed in terms of our relationship with food and how we approach these type of situations. Because you can bet your ass off that in the past, I would have probably avoided eating at those places, or maybe only having a salad or so, and definitely would have avoided having that cake. And I didn't even plug that cake into my fitness powder or anything alike. It was just like, yeah, maybe the piece that I'm going to have is like 200 kcals or so. Let's get it down. I want to make sure that I'm in a surplus. I had plenty of steps here today. I rather want to be in a higher surplus than too low. So.
Actually, that reminds me of when we drove up on Friday. We got there. We were meant to get there much earlier, but we got there at like 8 or something. And so they'd cooked dinner, and I didn't plug or try and estimate anything. I was just like, I know I've got 1,000 calories or so sinkhole. Let's have the roast. Let's have a dessert. And I'm not going to try and estimate or guesstimate. I'm just going to eyeball it here and now. Like I know I'm going to have hit my protein and I'm going to be in a surplus. And maybe I'm a bit over where I intend to be, but like you said, it's not the end of the world at all. Done now and then. Obviously, you won't want to do that every week, probably, or every day even, because that will start lead to, it just becomes a little bit untrackable, just similar to like winging your training a little bit and going in there and being like, I'm just going to train hard,
I think you bring up a good point, because this is a situation that I think many people find themselves in, and the typical form of complacency in an off-season. At first, you're still very much on point when you're coming out of a cutting phase, because you're a little bit afraid of gaining too fast, and you still have those habits from a cutting phase in place, and then slowly it's fading away. Slowly you're allowing for more and more deviations, and then more and more hyper palatable things that you don't even track, such as the cake that I had, where I was like, it's probably around 200 kcals. And if you do that too often, you start to justify that behavior, and sometimes you're even not accurate with that estimation, where you know that it's probably closer to 400 kcals, but you convince yourself that it's 200 kcals. And if you do that then on a very much frequent basis, you are ending up in a spot where you're gaining way too fast. And that is, of course, also not productive in itself.
Yeah, and I think it really helps when people also weigh themselves regularly, because then at least you have like an objective thing in front of you being like, hey, slow down. But it is a delayed feedback tool. It isn't like a feedback like, you overeat one day, the next day you're obviously going to see it. It doesn't always happen like that. So you've already set yourself back a little bit sometimes when you then start seeing it gain too fast. And so, I completely see what you're saying. And it's one of the things I think hurts most people's off seasons, where they get really complacent, whether or not that just be they get comfortable, or for a lot of people, I think they end up overeating and overshooting and needing to diet sooner than they really should. And you just don't want to put yourself in that position.
Yeah, it's kind of the same also with compensating. Let's just say that on the weekend, I was much more active in terms of step counts. This is always the case when Katie and I have those D-days, because we are walking just the entire time. Just because these are the type of people that we are. And I probably had like double to triple the amount of step counts that I normally have. So probably something up to 30,000 steps or so. And people overestimate how many additional calories you've burned most of the time. And compensating for it is something that I wouldn't really advise, because we are so bad in estimating how many calories we additionally burned on top of things. That's why I would normally just say like, hey, if you want to eat a little bit more, still cap it at around like maybe an additional 200 kcals, unless you've been super active, of course, but this is then most of the exception. In itself, though, I would just say brush it off. It's just one day. Don't compensate. Eat normally.
Yeah, I think especially if you're out and about, that's normally the way I do it, where I'm just like, I'm not gonna overestimate the calories here because I'm overdoing my expenditure slightly with my steps in a surplus, that is. So yeah, I think that's a reasonable approach to take for sure, especially like one day out of the week. When you then average it out, it feels like a lot acutely, but then when you look at your weekly average, you're like, oh, so my weekly average is up like 1,000 or so. Like it's actually not that big in the scheme of things. Same though with overeating. If you're over by 100, 200 one day, you may even land in your weekly average by the end of the week, depending on how the rest of the week has gone. So yeah, I think it's good to have that long-term perspective in general there. Helps solve a lot of stress.
Yeah, no, totally. And you had also a competitor on the weekend who you needed to take care of.
Yeah, so I had Mitch, and actually that's one of the things, in some ways, I think online coaches who are listening will be able to understand this, so definitely yourself, Pascal. In some ways, I am super grateful for my job in general, but for these sort of situations, in some ways I'm really grateful because I can do a lot of work just off my phone and like in the car. If I have an internet connection, I have a big enough screen, I can do bits and pieces of work. But at the same time, because we have like weekly check-ins, shows are on weekends, I don't know, you work with people across the world, they might have different holidays and things like this. I'm not just like Charlotte and have Friday completely off, Monday completely off, and I just have no commitments. Of course, it's not quite exactly that way for her because she needs to do bits from home sometimes, but more that way for her. So yeah, we have to work sometimes in these situations and juggle work around. But yeah, I had Mitch compete, so he competed in the OCB, and I guess the most important thing for him was he had an amazing time on stage. He really enjoyed it. I don't think anything really could have gone better. I know that sounds like too good to be true, but I was like asking for him like anything on show day in terms of, did anything not quite run well? Were any of your feedings off? Was like, I don't know, did you feel lost at all? How was everything? But he felt like everything basically ran, like, was it hard to get a pump or anything like this? It ran as smoothly as it possibly could be. And he's also got a show with the OCP again this next weekend. And it just reinforced how great it can be when you've had the opportunity to eat into shows, because that's what he's been doing the past month. And so it's just like every time he sends me a check-in, I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, you just look full, you look hard, you look diced, and we can increase food quite a bit. And he just looks like slightly better, but he's still holding great condition. And when you get into that position when you've eaten up, you just deal with glycogen so much better. It's not like your look can suddenly get worse or better. It's like, actually, it's very, very samey. And he has this like perma peak to kind of look at the moment, which is just excellent. And so, he unfortunately in his class, so it was a mixed class. I don't know exactly how it worked. I'm going to have to ask Mitch for specifics, but it wasn't like a height class or a weight class. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like novices. It was just open, like 5 competitors. So unfortunately, most of them were, I don't know what height they were, but maybe like 5'9", 5'8", and they're all similar heights. And then Mitch is like, I actually don't know how tall Mitch is off the top of my head, but he's 6 foot plus. Like he's a tall fucking guy. Yeah. So he's very long, like, you know, they have height classes and weight classes for a reason. It makes it a little bit easier to judge people side by side. And so I feel like maybe the judges look to him as like, okay, so he's not, if he was obviously the best, maybe they just have put him first and then judge the others. But maybe they put him aside as like, oh, he's harder to judge versus the other people, so we're just going to push him to one side. This is, I just, from judging experience, you have to make calls quite quickly, so I could see how that could happen. That's not just me saying, like, trying to make excuses for Mitch. I think, so he came last in his class. He came 5th out of 5 competitors. The guy that won it was, when I looked over the class, clear winner. The guy that second, like, he was like, the other guys were quite clear, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I think were pretty close. And I think for Mitch, his downside at the moment, what he needs to work on for his offseason, he knows this, is upper body. He just hasn't got that symmetry upper to lower. His lower body was the best on stage. He was the most conditioned, had the most like leg size, but his upper body is smaller in comparison. Probably likely down to his background where he comes from, like American football. And so they did a lot of wet leg training. So he hasn't quite worked his upper body to match that. And so that's why this show, we're trying to push for even more fullness. And if we even lose a little bit of detail through his glutes and quads and hamstrings, if we can get more fullness through his upper body to kind of bring a bit more symmetry, maybe that'll stand him in better stead, because there is a bit of a disproportional amount of like his upper body, just if he can bring his upper body to match his lower body, he's going to be very good, to put it that way. But yeah, like I said, the most important thing is he had a fantastic time. It went as well as we could have hoped. It's just on the day, people turned up and they were judged as better than him. So he didn't get the placing that we had hoped.
Yeah, no, but it sounds like he had a great experience, and I know how cheesy it sounds, and it sounds always like a bad excuse of like, my athlete
like
didn't.
Out.
Yeah, exactly. My athlete didn't place well, but he had a fantastic time. You know, of course, everyone would love to place exceptionally well and have a great time, but it's like Eric Helms once said, I think, there always needs to be a winner and a loser. Right, and depending on the judges' feedback and also the way that they are judging, and you know it yourself, Steve, you've been a judge now several times, and I saw in the calendar that you have some dates up and coming as well, once again with the WMBF. And when you're making those kind of calls, you can already make some kind of quite objective calculations of whether something was justified or not. And I think that your explanation there was very appropriate.
Yeah, no, you put it exactly right. And that's why when I shared his post about how it went, I was like, some people might see that as like a cop-out excuse or whatever. But when you coach enough people to stage, you realize like not every one of your athletes is going to come first. And I know that firsthand, like when I did my first show, like I came, I think, second last or whatever. Like if I'd given up at that point, like, come on, like it was Mitch's first ever time on stage, and to bring the condition and the posing, like the professionalism that he brought, like I couldn't be prouder of him for that. And yeah, it's just great that he had a great time up there. So yeah, I remember showing you his physique. I can't remember how long ago it was now, maybe months ago. And you were like, yeah, he could step on stage now. And I was like, I know, he's ready early, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And funny enough that you've been talking about eating your way into a show, because one of my athletes, she's right now 1 week out from her first show of the season, and she's a bikini athlete, and we did it the same there as well. Of like, I didn't expect us to be ready early, because it is always the best outcome, the outcome that everyone should be aiming for and wish for, but hardly ever comes to fruition in my personal experience and opinion. And for her, we were there, and we came. So several weeks now, I think 4 weeks ago or so, all of a sudden she started to look very, very crisp. And where I was like, okay, we are still losing at a very rapid pace at the moment. Performance is still very good though. And as I've already described a couple of times, I like to be aggressive when it comes to cutting. And I take a close look at performance and overall well-being as an indicator of whether we need to actually pull back or not. And if that's not there, I think you should be just pushing, you know. And that was the case for her. And she got to a point where I thought like, okay, this could be possibly the point where she's getting too lean even for bikini. And this is unfortunate because bikini and also men's physique, they don't have like clear outlines from each and every single bikini category in each and every division.
Particularly bikini.
It's always different to what they are looking for. Some federations, they like it when they are leaner and have different kind of body parts that stand out, whereas then there are other federations that don't really want this at all, right? And especially bikini and also men's physique. Men's physique, not so much anymore, because you can already be quite shredded and still place well. But especially bikini, you are being downgrade or downvoted if you're coming in too lean. Yeah. And it's a very fine line though. It's a very, very fine line, especially for those female individuals who are right on the cusp of actually also being able to compete in something like figure. Just due to the sheer muscularity, it can appear as if they are too lean, but in reality they are not. Right? And also due to some females have just, it's the same as males, of course. You have just certain body parts that stand out a little bit more. And if you're one of those females who have like a very clear six-pack, but other body parts still are not in that defined conditioning that you need in order to place well, then you have to get leaner, but then your six packs are just like popping out, which is something that many people also don't really want to see. So for her, it was more of a decision of like, okay, let's not risk it. It's the first show. I think, in my personal opinion, right now, you look fantastic. If we push it any further than this, we are running risk of actually getting down the votes. And in the end, we can always risk it now. If we get the feedback that you're not lean enough, we can still push it. If it's the other way around, we may put you into a territory where it's actually counterproductive from a physiological perspective, psychological perspective, and make you even just more tired, which is then being reflected in the physique as well. And for her, once again, also there, we decided to actually eat her way into the show. 2 weeks out, we raised her calories up. And yeah, now first show is starting here on the weekend, and I'm very, very much looking forward to that.
I have seen only short clips of her. I can't remember her name, but I know I got an image of how she's looking. And from what I'd seen, she looks in a great position and very bikini-esque physique as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if she does pretty well. That's exciting.
Absolutely. Short break. You can go over to Instagram in the meanwhile, check her out, and then we will be back in a couple of seconds.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
So yeah, touching on, should we continue about that discussion or should we change?
I just have one more point.
Yeah.
So I have a men's physique competitor as well competing this weekend.
That's true. Absolutely. Fantastic physique.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan has
big chest. Man.
Yeah.
That one pops out. It's
his
incredible.
chest
the
and
striations from the side.
Yeah, and his abs. He just has really nice, blocky, thick abs that really protrude, which is fantastic for men's physique without having like a wide waist. And yeah, his chest is, I mean, I said to him, after this show, fat loss is done. So we have like 2 or so weeks leading into his next show. I think we've got 3 weeks maybe into his next show, or 4 weeks with peak week. So we have like a month of being able to decrease the calorie deficit, get towards maintenance, and just increase fullness. I almost was tempted to do it for this show, but we've been running 2 back-to-back refeeds each week for the last months, and been over the last month assessing when does he look best. And every Monday after Saturday and Sunday refeeds, he looks incredible. I was just like, this is the look we want for stage. I was like, I don't want to mess around with anything. Take us 2 refeeds before the show day. You're going to look spot on. So yeah, I'm very excited for him. Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how he does, because like I said, fat loss is done. So I'm hoping this federation are one that rewards like a good level of condition, and he isn't too conditioned for them. From my experience with men's physique now, they just want you basically looking like a bodybuilder up top. So like basically the Christmas tree, straight chest, like.
But it's also something that you've seen on a professional level as well, where then they started off much, much softer, much, much smaller. And right now it's kind of, you can't even tell whether they may fit into something like men's physique or classic, or if they are already on their way in getting to open.
Yeah. So ideally, I guess, as a men's physique competitor, you want to have that kind of traditional male body fat storage, where is your glutes, hamstrings, quads that come in last, because then you do benefit from covering them.
I would
but if you could have striated glutes.
Yeah, I would make a terrible men's physique athlete. Like my upper body is the worst, and also from a body fat distribution perspective, it is the other way around for me. Hamstrings, glutes, quads are the ones showing up first, and then the upper body last, especially around the midsection.
It's funny, the other day I was just like posing, feeling myself a little bit in the gym in the mirror, and I was hitting some men's physique shots, which I can't pose men's physique because I've never really practiced it very well. And I was like, now I've grown my delts like more. Like I actually don't look terrible, I feel like, in the mirror here. But yeah, I don't think men's physique is for me either.
Maybe you should do it at some point, just
try.
For fun. Because
you're spending huge now.
Yeah, but by the way, you're spending the entire day on the location anyway, so why not?
What, to compete? Oh wait, no, exactly. As in do multiple categories. Just throw your hat in.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. It'll be good also. I'd like to learn the men's physique poses to just be able to help clients more, because it helps.
And you have a justification now in stepping on the men's physique stage.
Just, I don't know if my abs are well enough improved to do well, but we're
only one way to find out, Steve.
Oh man, yeah. Actually, I'm not counting out completely. Like part of me would have a while ago, but now I'm like, actually, especially since men's physique has got so popular, I feel like on the enhanced side, it's really grown in popularity. Like actually it has become more appealing from where it once was. Like it didn't appeal to me, that look previously, whereas now I'm like, they're coming in bigger, they're coming in harder. Basically more like a bodybuilder, which is probably why it appeals.
Something that you like, right? Big and hard.
Big and hard.
They're coming big and hard.
Absolutely.
Sorry, guys.
Did you have another topic in mind?
No, the big and hard threw me off. Kind of. No,
it did turn you on.
Not really. No, it threw me rather off. No, not really. If you were to ask me, like, okay, is there a specific topic that you want to talk about? I can't really think of anything right now. The only thing that I can think of is that I just enjoy training at the moment. But it's something that I've already talked about kind of a couple of weeks back. And then there was, of course, this short window of time where I was feeling a little bit ill again, and then the hip flared up. Right now, I did some intervention when it comes to my hip, and try something differently when it comes to my lower body movements. And I have to see the doctor now at some point, because I feel pain at the outer side of my knee since a very long time already. And I just always push it to the side, which is not a good idea. And I am just afraid that at some point I do so much damage over such a long period of time that, I don't know, some connective tissue is being, worn out. Yeah. And could have been avoided if I just were to see a doctor early enough. I don't know, right? So I have to see a doctor at some point, but it's just like so inconvenient here in Germany when it comes to going to see a specialist in that field. So an orthopedic, you have to easily wait like 3 to 6 months. And it's just the thought alone of this, right? Waiting for such a long time. It's just off-putting in my opinion.
Can you pay privately to see someone sooner?
I could, but it's a lot. It is a lot. And I always thought of becoming privately insured, because in Germany there's kind of public insurance and then private insurance. But private insurance is mostly reserved for people who are self-employed but also earning a lot of money. I do both. Just kidding. For me personally, it's not attractive enough to actually switch to a private insurance, simply because it's hard then to get back into public insurance with elevated age. So the older you grow, the harder it is then to get out of private insurance. And the thing is that your rates, they still stay high, right? So it could very well be that if you're someone who earns very well, you're self-employed, but you may run risk of losing all of that income, then you are in a very precarious situation then, because you still have to pay it. Whereas when it comes to public insurance, it always is attached kind of to your monthly income or annual income rather. So And I don't know whether I would like to be privately insured for the rest of my life and pay those high rates.
Yeah.
Even though that it has some benefits, and the benefits are you get an appointment at a doctor or a specialist very quickly.
I'm thinking,
and that is a nice thing if you really think about it.
Yeah, I can see why you're put off, but also having known you over these years, it might be a good investment because you do have flare-ups now and then.
Yeah.
What?
Let's not pretend and walk around the bushes. Let's say
You're
it as
fucked.
it is. I'm fucked. I'm a cripple. That's absolutely right. I'm a wreck.
What? In the meantime, what interventions have you done to help?
Yeah, good question. The thing is that all those kind of deep knee flexion movements is something that I love doing, while I also know that it probably puts the biggest strain on my hips and also the knees. And at the same time, unfortunately, my gym doesn't really have a lot of options available. They have like a Smith machine. They have a shitty leg press. That leg press I simply can't use because it's that shitty. And they have that shitty V-squat machine. A V-squat machine can actually be quite nice if they have a decent padding. But that one has just that short padding. So you can't even face the V-squat machine in order to then use the machine appropriately. And also the range of motion is limited. It's a completely useless machine, to be honest. And that's super unfortunate. I would love to have something like a proper hack squat in my gym and also maybe something like a belt squat. But we don't. Because if I had those things, I know that I could easily do it pain-free. Because that was always the case with the hack squat that I had in my old gym. I was doing it for years without any kind of pain or discomfort.
Yeah.
So what I'm now doing is, because I was always squatting and doing kind of knee flexion movements with a very narrow stance over the past months to years now. And I thought like, okay, because it always felt a little bit off when I had a wider stance. But perhaps it's just because I needed to drop the load a little bit more so in order to make it happen and work my way up again. So what I did was I actually now this time took a wider stance and took things much, much slower, even much slower than I did before. Very much slowly down so that I take out as much of the momentum as possible so that I minimize the strain that I put, especially on my knees, when coming down into the hole as much as I can. So wider stance, really trying to stay as upright as possible, more like sumo stance, and then really going as slow as I can. And so far, it feels good. Also, it gives me a little bit of a different stimulus and different sensation the days to follow. And yeah, it's right now just trial and error, see whether things are improving. Maybe things are then also improving from a mobility perspective. Could very well be that I just did things for too long that then, I don't know, made, because I'm not doing any kind of mobility drills. And it could be that because of that, I'm a little bit limited in my range of motion. And I know that I'm not the most agile and flexible. I can tell that, especially on the left side. I'm way more agile and flexible on the right side than the left side. And perhaps I should actually then do something about it in order to then put myself maybe in a better position again.
Yeah, I could see that. Do you incorporate any, and going slower and changing your stance makes a lot of sense to me, kind of working around the problem a little bit. And do you use any single leg work at the moment?
No, now I don't. Besides that, I'm doing then seated leg curls, lying leg curls, and leg extensions. But the next mesocycle will be a metabolite block because I haven't done this in a very long time. And I just want to give it a try once again. And there, I'm definitely going to incorporate these kind of things.
Do you squat twice a week then?
Yeah, exactly.
Same rep range, or do you vary that?
It's a little bit of a different rep range. The first day is more in the repetition range of 5 to 10. And then the second one is more in the range of 8 to 12. So just a slight one. But the thing is, it's also the exercise order that is a little bit different.
Yep.
On the second day, it's the fourth exercise and the second quad movement for the day, where I don't really need that much anymore. And where it's just about still getting a little bit more of a knee flexion going on and putting myself in a little bit of a different position, like a stretch position when I'm in the kneading position there. And yeah, because of that, I can also use much less load on the second day rather than the first day.
Makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of people, I've had that with clients before where they see the same exercise through the week, and even I will vary rep range, but I'm also like, yeah, but also the exercise ordered has changed. And that has a significant impact. So the fact you're doing that later in the session, a higher rep range, and it's pre-fatigued, like the load is must be like 20, 30, 40% less or something. I don't know, somewhere around there though.
Yeah, exactly. And even there, you can modify and play with a different foot stance if you want to, right? The way I went about it was that the second day was my initiation for then the wider stance. I was testing things out on the second day first, where then the load was already much lower, and I just wanted to use the second movement as more of an accessory movement. And there I've really noticed, that doesn't feel too bad, because I was so convinced from the past that wide stance squats, they don't really suit me well. But it could potentially just be that I've put myself in a compromised position in the past due to moving too fast, maybe, or too fast and / uncontrollably. And because of that, I was putting my body maybe in a top end range of motion rather than the proper range of motion that I still can control, or that I'm able to hit when I take things a little bit slowly. I don't know if you felt that, Steve, and have experienced that in the past. When you take things a little bit slower, I have the feeling that the body puts you in a better position to be able to hit a certain range of motion in a much healthier fashion. I don't know how else to put it. If you rush things, it's as if the mechanism doesn't really have time to catch up. And because of that, it throws things off a little bit. I don't know, like clockwork. When one part is moving too fast, it doesn't really grab into the other appropriately. But if things are in alignment with another and you move at an appropriate pace, it just clicks a little bit more, of the feeling.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because the one movement I've always felt this on, but it's true for whenever you're getting into that big stretch position, is like straight leg deadlifts or RDLs, any hip hinge. If I go fast, I never get the same range of motion because I'm not able to manage my positioning as well. And if I take it a bit slower, maybe like a 3-4 second eccentric, I can control my hip position, my knee position, my back position all much better, so I can get a bigger stretch. And the same I found, particularly like leg press, if I come in deep, like if I am using a stretch reflex there, I don't get anywhere near as much depth. But if I control it down, I can just keep sinking deeper. And I kind of view it like, those games that are like, they're like a wire, and then you have to like control this loop around the wire. And if you touch it, then you're buzzed and you have to start again. If you go fast, you have no way of controlling to get as far as possible. But if you control it, you go slower, you can finish the game and get deeper and further. So I view it very similar like that, where, that slower eccentric just allows you to get that further compression.
Yes, that's exactly it. And sometimes I have the feeling, I'm right now currently thinking the entire time what exercise it is that I'm kind of having in my head, but I can't really think of it at the moment. But sometimes I have the feeling that when I move too fast, something is clicking in my body. Whereas when I move slowly, it doesn't click and it feels way more smoothly. As if something is well lubricated, and if I go too fast, there's actually no lubrication and it's just kind of metal on metal, so to speak. Yeah, I know if you do, say, dumbbell flies, there's something I'm doing at the moment. If I did those rapidly, even the thought of doing like dumbbell flies really quick, it just brings me like, because it's such a heavy weighted stretch. Whereas like I have to go so slow in that deep position where I'm like, feel that out and then come up. If you bounce out of those stretch positions, I mean, I guess it's like a rubber band, like you're just stretching and you're going to ping back, and probably if you do it slower and you're more controlled, it's less likely to ping. I think that brings us to a very good topic overall, and that is the velocity on certain movements. And I think that there's not a general lifting velocity that I would recommend, because some people are like, okay, how fast should I actually move a specific load? And I can say from personal experience that some lifts you can just like go much, much faster than other lifts, for example. Certain back movements, and we've talked about back training quite a lot over the past couple of weeks. I think that there is even some justification of swinging things a little bit and taking things a little bit faster. Whereas, for example, for me personally, when it comes to chest movements, especially pressing movements, what I've found to be the case is the slower I go towards my chest and the more I really push the chest towards then the weight, the more I feel it in my chest and the bigger a stretch I get, which makes sense, of course, right? But I have the feeling that if I just go a tad faster, I don't really get the same stimulus and sensation on the chest as I had if I were to go much, much slower. And I think that for some other people, it may not be the case. They can go with a lifting velocity as they want and still feel it in their chest. You're someone, all right, Steve, you get always a pump in the chest. But that is something that I found, and this applies to certain other movements as well. Some movements you can rush, in quotation marks, and some you really have to slow down in order to get what it is that you want to get out of that movement.
Yeah, I think this is a good point, because I guess, I don't know if it's just my Instagram feed, but it seems to be like a really popular thing to have very slow eccentrics. And sometimes I look at my lifting and I'm like, man, it looks like I'm rushing this compared to someone else. But there's so many variables at play. And from the research, we know there's a wide range in terms of eccentric speed that you can go at. And this is why, unless I'm purposefully trying to program for someone like slow eccentrics, I just say, go, as long as you're lifting under control, like you're fine. And as an example, like on a Smith machine, my Smith machine in Yorkies is like zero resistance on it, so I get no like assistance on it, so it drops really quickly. Same on the leg press, like it comes really quickly down on me. So if I try and go really slow on that, I end up just kind of feeling it in my core, feeling it in my lower back, and it just feels uncomfortable. So I come a bit quicker with it and it feels completely under control and fine. Whereas, like, I guess, I don't know if that's similar to other lifts, but some things have a little bit of assistance on the machine or not. And then other people just lift in a different manner and their SFR can feel a little bit different. So I think so long as you feel a good stimulus for you and you're under control, like you'll find, like you said, the difference between us, like you need that extra control maybe on your pressing, where actually I don't, and potentially even feels just a bit worse for me. Like I might feel it else where I don't want it to.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it always comes back to what it is that we are always preaching. You have to figure out what works best for you. And I think it's so easy that we are getting caught up in all of the minute things that people are discussing and talking about, whether it is something like ARIA, whether it's now lengthened partials, for example, whether it is how to do a specific, back movement in order to hit the back the most appropriate way, or lifting velocity, all that kind of stuff doesn't really matter as long as you can't figure out how to train a lift for yourself. And I think it's always then going in there and practicing, and that's something that I always try to say to my athletes, that every single time you're setting foot in the gym, it's kind of like practicing, as if you're going to, dancing. All right, you're going in there, you're not saying, I'm training, I'm working out. No, you are going in there, you're practicing mostly. Doing a specific movement pattern, and hopefully up here, some neurological connections are being built, and next time you're better, stronger, faster, whatever. All right? And that's the same that we are trying on a consistent basis as well.
It reminds me, because you just brought this up, and I was trying some stuff yesterday, practicing, I guess, in my deload with some new back movements, because Kasim sent me a video kind of going through some of his lat pull arounds that he was doing with Brian Bornstein. So I was practicing some of those, trying them out. And today, and even yesterday night, I had sore delts, like rear delts. I was like, what the fuck? This is annoying. Like, I shouldn't be feeling it. I don't want to hit my rear delts. I want to be hitting my lats. So there's some of those motions where you're like, basically you're sat side on and then coming around here. And I don't know if my positioning or motion was slightly off, but I'm like, man, they're just not they're not nailing it for me. And again, this is that kind of comes back to that practice and trialing things out and seeing what suits you and works for you. And actually, this brings me back to a post I made just the other day on Facebook. I was like, too many people are hyper focused on social media and getting their training from social media versus actually looking at what they're doing in the gym and their logbook and what results they're getting in practice. Because I don't know if you ever get it with clients, but I sometimes see that their requests for training are very much influenced by what they've seen on social media, whether or not that be more or less volume or a certain exercise. And I'm always like, have that skeptical coach feedback of, are you saying this from a perspective of like what's actually going on with what you're doing in the gym, or have you seen it elsewhere and you're being influenced by something there? So,
which is not necessarily a bad thing.
No,
because that would directly conflict to what it is that we've just talked about, of testing things out, see what works for you. But at the same time, I know what it is that you mean and what it is that you're referring to, and that is chasing the shiny object of not even having thought about whether you need that. It's just something that I want this. Right? It's like, I don't know, a dog that hasn't really thought about what it is that he's chasing. He's just chasing something in order to get hold of it.
Yeah, it's and that's exactly right. It's not like it's a terrible thing. I think it's good to like test yourself and shit test yourself in terms of, oh, maybe I would benefit from something else and whatever. And you can practice things, trial things out, absolutely. But you can quickly get lost if, again, we've talked about it with like new studies that come out. It's like one new study came out and showed this, and it's like, oh, I'm going to drop everything I'm doing and jump right on whatever that new study is saying. It's like, oh, don't just like follow your current favorite Instagram influencer. Which I think sometimes hurts us because we often come back and boil things down to the basics, and we're like, yeah, I mean, lots of things can work because it suits these principles and this is what really matters. And maybe it takes people a while to like get lost with all these influences and different jump around and get a bit burnt, and then they come back to us and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm back.
Absolutely. Do you have anything else, Steve? Coming up on time.
No, I don't think so. No, I was just looking at my long-term plan. I was like, man, how have I got, I think it's something like 2 more mass phases, then a 10-week cut, then like 2 mass phases, a mini cut, and then like 2 masses and a prep or something like that. And I was just like, how the fuck is this already? My plan is coming into action already. I'm like, oh.
I know. It's kind of very similar because I haven't even organized my suit for the wedding celebration.
Oh shit, yeah.
And I really need to be on it soon now, because otherwise the time is up. And that always reminds me, because I wanted to do a shorter cutting phase before then the wedding as well, which is then about to start very, very soon. And I feel like I've just dieted, which is of course not the case, but it just feels like that. And I think that you can very much relate to that, just considering that your last mini cut is already kind of 7 weeks ago or so. And it feels like it was 2 weeks ago.
But I know, especially for a prep, and then see it, like it always emphasizes when I see someone like Mitch, where I'm like, man, because I truly didn't get to a position really where I was ready early and I could eat up into shows last season, which still kind of baffles me in some ways because it was a long season and I got pretty lean. But I really would like to get that edge of extra leanness. But similar to Mitch, I also flatten out quite a lot, and not that I have like massively impressive legs like him, but I flatten out to the point where for my frame and for my like bones, I need my muscles to look really big and full. So I almost look, I looked at some of my stage shots. I was like, sometimes I even look better. I feel like a little bit like fatter and fuller, but I'm like, I know I want that shredded look with the fat fullness, but not the fat muscle. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still also, I think probably it will tell me after that 10-week cut that I think I've programmed whether or not I want to do next season, whether or not I feel I'm improved enough. Like I want to do it from like a personal perspective, because competing is fun, especially when you take clients to stage, you get that itch. And especially when you judge and you're like, fuck. But I'm also, when I judge, I'm also like, fuck, how am I gonna stack up against these fuckers?
But I think it's a great perspective to have, instead of being like impatient of stepping on stage again, being more so objective and rational about that decision, and making that call on your own of saying like, I don't really think that I've improved enough to already make the step on stage here for the next season. And if it's there, then it's there. If it's not, then continue doing another round of gaining phase or so, right? I think it's great to have that perspective instead of can't wait to get on stage another time.
Yeah, I absolutely take the perspective that you mentioned there, where if I don't feel I'm improved enough, or people around me tell me I'm not improved enough, I will take more time, because it's not worth it. It's like, I don't know, traveling somewhere to perform just as the same or worse, and I'm like, I'm not into that. I'm in to improve and do better, and there's no need to compete. It's only for my selfish perspective to compete.
I think that was a fantastic way of ending the show. Honestly, I very much like that last sentence of yours. And guys, as always, hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section below. Give Steve a little bit of love for his wisdoms here at the tail end of the podcast. And as always, thank you very much. Cheers.
I don't often have wisdom. Normally it's Pascal with the wisdom, so I appreciate it.
I'm also a little bit older than you. So
more life experience, that's for sure. So guys, thank you very much. We'll catch you next time.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.